You know, one time I came to my class. I was chairman of sociology at Georgia State University. I spent there 25 years. And I once came to my class and I taught my students, I said, I hope you understand my southern accent. They look at the southern accent. I said, yeah, southern Czechoslovakia. So I'm cautioning you too. Although my children tell me they do not detect an accent in me, you just have to listen to me. I was born in a small little town. Now, wait a minute, small is a relative term. I thought that my town was a small town. I came to Lakeland. My hometown was in the eastern part of Czechoslovakia. See, Czechoslovakia before 1938 consisted of the Bohemia, Moravia, Slovakia, and Carpatho-Russia. And I was from the easternmost part, the tail of Czechoslovakia, so to say. I lived in a wonderful, wonderful country. Czechoslovakia, prior to 1938, I will say was the most democratic country that has ever existed. It came into existence in 1920. The person who was instrumental in making and creating Czechoslovakia, together with Mr. Wilson after World War I, was Thomas Garrick Masaryk, who became president of Czechoslovakia. And I must confess to you, my affinity to him is not only because he was a wonderful person, but he was also a professor, and guess what? He was a professor of sociology. So there is a kind of a relationship between me and, although there's many years apart. When he died, his student became the president of Czechoslovakia, Dr. Edward Beneš. What was the principle of that country was it was a country made up of many ethnic groups. In my hometown alone, and my hometown was a city of 27,000. In my hometown alone, the majority of the people, it was a Jewish town, because the majority of the people in the town were Jewish. Of the 27,000 inhabitants of that city, about 16,000 to 17,000 were Jewish. You know, 2/3 of the population was Jewish, almost at that much. And then we had the Russians there, the Czechs there, Hungarians, and Germans. You know? And so each of them, I was working for my father after school and so on, and I had to learn, I had to speak to all the customers in their own languages. So by the time I was about 10 and 11, I spoke 6 languages because it was demanded of me. I never thought anything about it. Big deal, you know. Life was good. Life was good there. My father had a nice store. We had a book and stationery store. And my father was very educated, self-educated person, and who had great influence on my thinking and my way of life. Life was good until 1938. 1938, in a conference called the Munich Conference, between Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of England, Daladier, the Prime Minister of France, Hitler, and Mussolini. Prime Minister of England, Chamberlain, was very committed to peace. He lost a son during World War I, in the war, and he did not want another war. Remember, 1938, it was only just 20 scant years since the World War I ended. So he felt that he would like to 48. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you that Hitler really was a man of peace. You really don't believe me? Well, he was a man of peace. He wanted a peace of Czechoslovakia. And so suddenly, one day, I'm in Czechoslovakia, and then after the conference, turn around, and now I'm now Hungary. Although I spoke Hungarian, but not very well. When I go back to school a few days after the government changed, they put a book in front of me in Hungarian, and they told me to read. That was a little difficult. But as soon, being young, this is a beautiful thing of being young. The mind is capable of changing like that, just fast. I cannot go on. It doesn't work. But Hungary was already influenced by Germany. And when the Hungarians came into my hometown, to my region, they brought with them already anti-Jewish laws. Consider this, that of the 16,000 Jews, most of the Jews were in business. My hometown was in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains, and it was the beginning of the flatland. So this was a place where the people of agriculture from the flatland came into the city to shop, and the people from the mountains came down to shop. That's why business was the primary activity in my hometown. And so when the Hungarians came in, they brought with them a law against Jews, in a sense, what's called numerus clausus. It means that they permitted only a certain percent, 7% of all businesses to be in Jewish hands. Now here you have a town where you have maybe 80% of the businesses are in Jewish hands, and so suddenly now only 7% is allowed to have business license. And my uncles had lost their businesses. Luckily, my father did not. He was very liked in the city, and they made sure that he kept his license. And here we are, I am, and now my father has become the supporter not only of our family, but everybody else also supporting their existence. Never mind, we Jewish people have a history of being persecuted for a long time. Since the year 350, when Constantine III, called Constantine the Great, came to power, he was the first one to bring anti-Jewish laws, which consisted that Jews cannot live where there were Christians lived, Jews cannot employ Christians, and Jews, you know, when Jews don't marry Gentiles, it was not because the Jews were so against marrying Gentile women, but it began with a law with Constantine that he did not permit the Jews to intermarry with Christians. And above everything else, the law said that if any rabbi converts a person to Judaism, the rabbi forfeits his life and the convert forfeits his life. And so consequently for the next 2,000 years or so, there was hardly any conversion going on, which is still true today. So when the Hungarians came with the anti-Jewish laws, we were already, had experience, historical experience. Sometimes it's like Carl Jung talks about this kind of historical genetic experience that you have, that we call the archetype. We were used to this notion. Why didn't we leave? People ask me, if things were becoming that bad, why didn't you leave? Well, there were two problems. One is the problem of the Jewish people themselves. And the second one was the problem of the other countries. 1939, January 1939, I wrote my uncle, in spite of against my father's wishes. I was 13 years old, still 13, and I sent him my birth certificate, all kinds of documents. I said, please take me out. And my father's, like philosophy, just like so many other people's philosophy, Jewish philosophy, was what you call in the South, to hunker down. Sit down and wait it out. This too shall pass. But there were people who did not want to, and they got up and wanted to leave. The problem is that no country wanted to take them in. You know, how many of you have heard about a ship called St. Louis? Well, I don't see too many hands. St. Louis was a ship that brought Jewish people from Germany to the Western world, to Cuba, to Mexico, to the United States. No country opened its doors permitting them to come up and settle down. They were shipped back to Germany, and of course most of them were killed in the concentration camps. But by the beginning of 1944, end of 1943 and 1944, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel. America was winning the war, with the Allies in North Africa. They were winning the war in Italy, and we said, indeed, just keep on waiting, hunker down. I was the master of the radio. We were not allowed to have a radio in the house. Jewish people were not allowed to have radios, and so we hid one. Every night at a certain time, a certain number of people came to our house, and I produced the radio and turned it to BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, and this is London calling, and we listened in Hungarian to the news. And as we listened to the news, we were sure that Messiah is coming. Namely, America is winning the war. Soon we shall be freed. Soon we shall be, again, have our rights. Amidst all this optimism, something came to crash. In March of 1944, see, I graduated from high school. I couldn't go to the university. Not allowed. It was numerous rules. No Jew was allowed to go to university. I worked for my father in the store, and I was on my way to the store when I saw a lot of German army, soldiers in my hometown. I soon found out that Germany has invaded Hungary. They did not like what Hungary was doing, namely, not really eliminating the Jews. Hitler had one idea in his mind. He wanted to make Europe, what we call in German, Judenrein, free of Jews. And by 1944, he became very impatient. He wanted everything to happen at that time. And so he invaded Hungary, removed the government, and placed a new government, a Hungarian Nazi government, in its stead. One morning I get up and the news is, all Jews must go and live in a ghetto. You know what a ghetto is, don't you? Just can't help but being a teacher. Ghetto came from Venice, the word ghetto, because in 1400 the Jews were forced to move into two islands, to live in two islands, and the two islands were called Ghetto Vecchio or Ghetto Nuevo, the old ghetto and the new ghetto. So from then on, any place where there was a Jewish concentration was called ghetto. So the ghetto was designed by the Germans. They took a number of streets, cordoned those streets off, surrounded by barbed wire, and everybody whose home, every Jewish person whose home was outside of the barbed wire, had to move into the ghetto. My home was in the ghetto, inside the ghetto. So my uncles and aunts and other people who were outside of the ghetto came into my home. This is when really the Holocaust, its greatest impact had on me. Ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to do tonight is a little bit different, something than the usual stories about the Holocaust. You know, the Holocaust stories in itself, while interesting and people want to know, the most important part to me is not only what I have experienced, but what I learned from that experience. You see, we human beings must always look at our experiences and judge our experiences. You know? And from it we learn. For what use is having experiences if they don't teach us something? What use is for me to come to tell you sad stories, only sad stories, and not tell you what is it that I have learned from these stories? What is it that I have learned from these experiences? This is why you go to school, right? This is why you study history, not because you want to experience what our people in the past experienced, but learning from their experiences. We need to learn from our past so that we can improve the future. And in that light, I would like to tell you my stories, but only insofar that I will tell you a couple of my experiences in the camps, and then draw conclusions. What have I learned from them? Is there any meaning to human experience? You know, later on maybe in your coming years, you're going to read the book of Job. And somewhat, not similarly to what Job was, but again, the question that I'm raising, what can we do to alleviate the conditions that has led to the Holocaust? Is there something that we can do? Is there something that we can change in ourselves and in the society that we live in? So, with your permission, let me then continue. Now, we were in the camp, we were in the ghetto. A week, 2 weeks passed by. It was a Friday morning. I woke to the sound of gunfire. I looked out the window, and I see German soldiers, Hungarian soldiers, going into homes. I wonder what happened here. What is happening? I didn't have to wait too long to find out. The doors were burst open. German and Hungarian soldiers came in, their weapons in their hand. The first thing they do, they came over to my father, and they hit him with the butt of their rifle. And I was here, an 18-year-old boy, and I'm being hit with the butt of the rifle. This is merely to get our attention, and we mean business. And they tell us, move out, get together with anything that you can carry, and be out on the street in 15 minutes. Get that which you can carry and be outside. What do you take? Food, of course. Some change of clothes, yes. And you take some jewelry. And you're surprised, jewelry? Well, you know, money doesn't have a value. But jewelry money always has a value, with the hope that if you come someplace and you need to buy some food, make some exchange, you can take jewelry and exchange for food. Filling our suitcases, our rucksack, our backpack, we're out on the street with everybody else, and we are being marched to a factory, a brick factory, where the gathering place was. The reason they took us to a brick factory is because bricks, when they are made, they must be dried, and they have these sheds there, roof, under which the bricks used to be. No walls around it, but just roofs on the sheds. And this is where we were put there, and it was just the beginning of April. Cold, of course. We stayed under the shed for a few days until the Germans and the Hungarians went to small villages and gathered all the Jews and brought them to the brick factory. And then the trains came, the infamous trains. We were packed in that train. Now these were cattle cars. And as you know, cattle cars, you have, middle is a door, which takes about 1/3 of the side of the car, and you have 4 little windows in the corners of the train, of the car there, and those 4 windows were blocked up with barbed wire, lest no one should be escaped. We were forced in there. The doors were closed. They locked it. Chains were drawn around it and padlocked, and off we went. On the second day, being in the train that evening, the devout Jews were in a corner saying their late afternoon and evening prayers. I was sitting there in front of my mother. She opened up the packs, took out bread and some salami, some sausage. She cut this, bread, gave a piece to me, gave a piece to my brother Benjamin, who was at that time 14, and gave a piece to my sister Esther, who was 10. I was the oldest. I was 18. I look at my mother's face and I see her, that she's crying. You see her crying, tears coming down her eyes. I said to my mother, "Mama, why are you crying?" And she tells me, "Tuli, my nickname." She said, "Tuli, I had a wonderful 20-some-odd years with your father. I was blessed. You had a wonderful life. I'm crying because of you kids, you haven't had a chance to live yet." It's kind of a scene that never leaves your mind. It's one of those watershed scenes that has an effect upon your life and your thinking the rest of your life. Here, watching your mother crying for us. I like the Bible. And there is a passage in the book of Isaiah, and it says, "A voice in heaven is heard, Rachel is crying for her children." It's depicting an event like this in the Bible. And I cannot think about what has happened to me, and looking at my mother, then thinking that she is the quintessential mother. She's the Rachel, my Rachel, crying. Her crying on earth was like crying in heaven. Late that morning, around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch dark outside, I look out at those barbed wire windows. I see nothing except 3 huge flames. And a peculiar odor emanating, coming into the train. I didn't know what it was. Nothing's happening. But as soon as the sun came out, there was commotion. And in German I hear shouting, aussteigen, the clatter of unchained, being unchained, and soon they came to my car. They unlocked it and unchained the car, and they opened the door, and their command was aussteigen, which means get out. We get out on the tarmac, and I try to find out, where am I? And I don't know. But on both sides of the tarmac, excuse me, both sides of the tarmac, there were buildings, office buildings. And at the top of the roof, there were imprinted slogans in German. On one side of the roof, it said, Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free. On the other side of the office building, on the roof, it said, Arbeit macht das Leben süß, in German meaning work makes your life sweet. Do you know what cynicism is? Cynicism, sarcastic cynicism, is the most horrible act against the human being. And these two slogans telling us when we come there, hey, work will make you free. Hey, work will make your life sweet. When they knew damn well that we are going to be killed, or most of us will be killed, that is the act of a cruel and a cynical government and people. You know, that is cynicism. We were told to make 2 separate lines, women on one side there, men on another side. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Esther, my sister. Goodbye, grandma. Uncles, aunts, cousins. It's like a voice in the wilderness. The sound is going, but has no meaning. My father and I, his brothers, 2 brothers, and another cousin, we lined up with the van. The word comes to us. A German officer will come and ask you how old my brother is and how old is my cousin. Be sure that you tell them he is 16. For if he is not 16, they will call him out, they will take him up and carry him away. Sure enough, just a few moments later comes the German officer and he looks at my brother and he asks my father, "Wie alt ist er?" In German, how old is he? And my father says, 16. When was he born? And my father calculates rapidly and he says, oh, 1928. What month? I was born in June 16th. Ah, said father said, he will be 16 in June. And he took him out. My cousin standing next to me, his father also claimed him to be 16 when he really was only 10. But he was a big boy. And he gave him the appropriate year and month. And they left him there. They believed him. My brother was taken away, never to be seen. You know, I was in Austria some years ago, and unfortunately I was too late to go in to visit Freud's home, you know. who lived in Austria. So I was standing outside his house and I said, you know, Freud, appear to me, speak to me. What I wanted to ask him, really, tell me why. Why is it that even until now, even to this present, I still dream of my brother? I have a dream that comes to me that I go to a foreign country and I meet someone and we start talking. And somehow there are some great deal of similarities in our experiences. And as we keep on talking, it turns out to be my brother, only to wake up and I know it's not. When people say have closure, it seems like I don't have closure yet. I don't think I ever will. I don't dream so much about my mother or sister, but I dream constantly about my brother. Anyway, we were in these two lines, and the man was trying to go ahead. Down, way down in the end, there was like a man, a soldier, clad in a full leather coat. And all he did was he pointed to the screen like this. And we come close to him. Later on I found out that guy was Mengele, you know, the death doctor of Auschwitz. And when I was in Auschwitz, you know, while I was standing there on the line, there was an older inmate and there was a plane flying overhead. And he says, oh dear God, he said, if he would only throw some bombs here and destroy us all. And here I am, the newcomer, you know, I'm a greenhorn still in the camp. And I asked him, hey, tell me, what is it? Why do you want to die? And his answer was very cryptic. He said, you will see, you will see. Well, anyway, we go ahead in front of this man, and my father and I and my cousin and my uncles come before him, except one uncle who points to the right. My other uncle, Michael, who had a childhood accident. He was sliding on ice and broke his leg, and one leg became about 4 or 5 inches shorter, and the other leg, he was sent to the left. But we know by this time that if you were sent to the left, means you were sent to die, to be killed. And we, on the other hand, were strong and young. We were sent to work until we died, you know. So we go into the right and we come into a courtyard. There in the courtyard, there's a gauntlet. There are guys with big electric shears. You know, like the ones that you have seen maybe shearing the sheep. And these guys come and they cut off. Well, first of all, we had to get undressed. The only thing that we are allowed to keep were our shoes. And here I'm walking naked. In the early April cold, and these guys come and they shear, they cut off our hair, every hair, not only our head, but our pubic areas and everything. And then there was another guy who came with a mop, a small little mop, dipped into some foul-smelling black liquid. Then he puts us in our private parts, and I asked him, what is this for? And he said, delousing. I just came from home, not a single louse in me. But a few months later, yes, I was suffering from it. I had so much of it that I could go reach in with my hand and take out a handful and just throw it away. But yeah, you know, but this is just adding to the business. And after we were prepared, we were taken to a room to get a shower. Now, everybody, I did like everybody else, I took my shoes and put them in the corner. And I took my shower, and I come back to pick up my shoes, and something happened. Somebody took away one of my shoes and left me his right shoe. So I had two right shoes. Now, what do you do with two right shoes? Well, should he have been a big guy with a size 12 foot, maybe I could have put my left foot in there. But the fact was that he had that smaller foot than mine. I could not do anything with that shoe. So as they were walking around there, these old inmate supervisors, they had bands around their arm called capo, meaning supervisor. I asked him, I tell him the story, and he says, I asked him, can I get a pair of shoes? And he says, yes. He said, you see that window there? I said, yes. And he said, go and knock on the window. And when it opens up, the people in there ask them for a pair of shoes. They may, the operative word is may, they may give you a pair of wooden shoes. So, a pair of wooden shoes is better than nothing. So I go there and knock on the window opens up, there are two people inside a room there. One was an assessor with his gun, and the other one was an older inmate. Let me tell you something about human nature. And the unfortunate thing is about human nature that when you are in prison, you know the Stockholm effect, they identify themselves with their captors. You know? And there are many times people who were in prison started taking on the characteristic of the Germans. And this couple, this inmate there, took on the characteristics of the SS. He comes to me, he doesn't ask me what I want. First thing he does, he takes a stick in his hand that he had. You know, have you heard about an Irish lady? That's a nice stick, gnarled, heavy, and he had a stick like that. And he hits me over the head. Then he asked me what I want. I was told that I should start my request with the following word, Ich bete gehorsam, meaning I am humbly requesting. So, following the advice I was given, I tell this man who just hit me in the head, I said to him, Ich bete gehorsam, I am humbly requesting for a pair of shoes. He doesn't ask me why, wherefore, what happened. All he does, he hits me over the head, and he closes the window, and I walk back to my father crying. You know, you cry when you're hurt, but sometimes physical pain is not as hurtful as sometimes emotional pain. And in this instance, being hit on the head, although extremely painful, did not have the same impact upon me as the frustration. I come back to my father crying, and he says, why? So I tell him what happened. And then I ask a question of my father. I ask a question that has been a motto for me for a long, long time. I said, Father, how is it possible that today, now, in the middle of the 20th century, it was 1944, middle of the 20th century, that we have made such great advances in science, we have made great advances in the social sciences, in philosophy and theology and everything else. How is it still possible that man remains so cruel to other men? Later on the question was rephrased in it, saying, are we still more governed by what Freud called the id, the bestiality in us, than the humanism in us? I have learn one thing in time, that we are all human, but that is not adequate, that is not enough. In the process of growing up, we have to alter this word, human. We cannot be merely human. What we need to do is to add an E in the end of human, which makes the human then humane, right? It is not adequate to be just human. The question that I asked my father at that time, why are we so inhuman or inhumane, was the question that motivated my thinking all my life. What is it in us that makes us so inhuman? And more importantly, what is it that we must do so that we can become humane? Let me answer that question later on. Now, I want to share with you another episode in my experiences in being in camp. If you'll permit me, I'll sit down again. They tell me I'm in an advanced age. It's not true, I'm only 87. Please, I'm not, except when I'm bowling. I know the younger guys throw the ball much faster than I am. I was in Auschwitz. From there, they sent me to Warsaw, capital of Poland. Just a year ago, before that, the Jewish people in the Warsaw ghetto rebelled against the Germans. It took the Germans to defeat all of Poland in 5 days. But it took them to defeat the Jews in the ghetto in 7 days. I'm proud of that, you know. After they defeated the uprising, they came and they dynamited every building in that ghetto. So when you came into the ghetto area, it looked like the atomic bomb was exploded there. There was nothing else flattened our brick. They brought us there for a project. They call it Project to Rebuild Berlin. And our job was to sit there and to clean the bricks from the mortar, stack them up, which they would ship back to Germany. And what was the idea was that they would use these bricks to rebuild Berlin, that these was being bombed now incessantly, both by the American and the British Air Force. After a few months being in Poland and Warsaw, the Russians were coming here, and they were going to take us away from Poland, from Warsaw. So one day when we come back from work, the commandant of the camp leader, the commandant, comes to us and tells us, tomorrow we will be leaving here. Unfortunately, he says, we don't have enough trains that are able to come into Warsaw. We'll have to walk for 100 kilometers to a place where the trains are going to pick you up. Is there anybody here who cannot walk 100 kilometers? We know that not everybody can walk the distance. I'll tell you what he said, the commandant. For those people, to show you that we are not inhumane, we will provide transportation. We'll put you on a truck. My high school friend stands next to me, Friedman. And he says to me, truly, I'm going to step up. I tell him, are you out of your mind? What do you think? Do you think that they are going to knew what is going to happen, and he did not care, and he did not want to live. The most important thing to survive, first of all, is you have to have a desire to live. You must fight and maintain your desire to live. You lose this desire. You lose the capacity to live. And he just sort of said, I really don't care anymore. No? So I said, he stepped up in the midst, they took all these guys outside of the camp, and next to her was the rat-tat-tat-tat machine gun, never to appear again. Next morning, we start walking. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in August, Poland can be very, very hot. The night before it rained, it was humid and hot. And here we are walking, and we have no water. All we had was a blanket, a spoon, and a little basket, a blue little basket. So being in the front of the company walking, we walked in these dirt, roads. I see the whole indentations in the ground from the last night's rain, muddy water. Who cares? I reached down like this and picked up and I drank. People who could not make it, who sat down and fell down from tiredness, from thirst, they were shot and left there. By nightfall, close to nightfall, we come to a meadow, and not far from there is a nice big river. Some of the people were so thirsty that they jumped up, like I did now, and ran to the river, only to be shot. The commandant told them, wait, we will put guards into the river, you will be allowed to go in to drink. And indeed, he put guards in there, and we walked into the water. My father and I and uncles, we bent over and drank. 5 minutes. We were taken out, past the shores of the river, to the meadow, and we had to sit down or lie down because we were not allowed to stand up. If you stand, it's difficult to guard you, but if you are lying down or sitting down, the Germans standing there with the submachine guns, they can control you, they can shoot. I was very tired, I fell asleep. What is a chicken dream about corn? So in my dream there, I remember, I dreamt about my home, the bathroom, the faucets open and water gushing all around, the kitchen, again, the water coming out. I wake up and I start doing something. My father looks at me and says, what are you doing? And indeed, what was I doing? I was digging a hole in the ground. He says, what's this for? He said, I wanted to see if I can find a well. Crazy? I mean, absolutely crazy. I am digging with a spoon and a musket to find water, to dig a hole in the ground? But what is he going to say to me? Don't? I knew one thing instinctively, that if I don't get more water, I will not make it next day at all. I am still completely dehydrated. So let's dig. I dig about a foot, and suddenly the earth ceases, the topsoil ceases, and underneath I come to sand. And I dig more, and the brown sand becomes dark, moist sand. And I dig more, and I look down, and suddenly what do I see? Coming up, water. Water coming up. Water fills the hole. I take my dish, I fill it up. You see, I was a good son. fifth commandment, honor thy father and mother. So I take my little chisel, musket, I fill it up with water and I hand it to my father. Usually, you don't have in mind saying blessings or anything, but this is a real great occasion. It's appropriate. So I say the Jewish blessing over water, which is, blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who everything was created by thy word. You know? And he drinks and gives me that, and I drink, and everybody else looking at me, what I've done. Now suddenly everybody else around me, everybody else is digging in the ground. And then I see a shadow cast upon me, and I look up from the lying position, and I see the camp commandant comes to me, and he looks down. He had on his boots that were shining to a polish, to a mirror-like polish, and he looks down at me and he says, now that he had his coat on, you know, over the shoulder with the, I'm looking, I see the image. He had this Persian lamb collar, you know, and he says, well, now that you found water, you might as well have it. Gracious of you, isn't it? Well, I cannot go and tell you everything. But let me take these two things. What have I learned? What have I learned from my first experience, my first question that I asked? What is it that we, you know, how can we alter our social life to make it, you know, that we should not be so inhuman to each other? How can I do it? How can we do that? When I came to the United States, and I got my PhD and I started teaching, and I was teaching a course on race and ethnic relations, and it was in the middle of the sexual revolution, you know, the women's revolution, the civil rights movement, and the going buzzword was that if we want to make a better society, we have to learn to be tolerant. Tolerant of each other. Well, you know, I bought that idea, and I was teaching to the idea of tolerance, when suddenly I realized, you know, there's something wrong here. Tolerance is not really as good as people want it to appear. You see, there's a problem with tolerance. And the problem is this, that tolerance reinforces the condition that make tolerance in the first place necessary. I'm talking kind of a literacy. Think of it. What does it mean? I've been married now, this Christmas, coming Christmas, 63 years. It's a long time. Why have I been married that long? It's because of me, but because of my wife. She tolerated my foibles. They were not really bad foibles, but she tolerated what it was. Tolerance in this human setting of one individual to another, it's a wonderful thing. I love photography. I had a friend who was a good photographer and a made friendship, and we did beautiful work together, and I tolerated him. What did I tolerate? He was partially deaf and he shouted. He never spoke. He shouted, you know. And because he was such a wonderful photographer, he was a nice guy. I tolerated this part of it. Tolerance means I, the superior person, right? I'm going to tolerate you who is not as good as I am, right? This is what tolerance is, isn't it? You always have the person who tolerates you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I decided that I do not want to be tolerated. No, thank you. I do not want as a Jew to be tolerated. And I started writing and teaching and talking about the most important thing that I think that is necessary for society. And that's the principle of justice. The principle of justice should be superior to everything else. Before I began, we saluted the flag. And what did we end with? With liberty and justice for all. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care if you don't want to tolerate me. Time? Okay, well, you know, you got me working on it, so. Okay. You always have to have somebody overseeing you, right? That's your job. What I want for me, as I want for you, is you to have the right to be whatever you want to be. You want to be a Jew? Welcome. You want to be something else? I may not like it, but you have the right to be. Have the right to be is the primary thing. And we are blessed with this idea already. This is the central theme in our Constitution. The second thing that I want to share with you is the water incident. What was my motivation to dig? Another quality that we must foster in our life, and that is hope. People who had hope were able to withstand. Even if you died, you were better off than other people if you had hope. My grandmother taught me, money lost, nothing lost. Don't ask my wife. Hope lost, everything lost. The people who had hope, the people who had still maintained the joie de vivre, as they say, a kind of lust for life, for living, are the ones who were able to withstand these troubles. Hope and a combination with justice are the two fundamental things that we need to have and need to be taught. For it is with hope and with justice that we can create a better society. Now, okay, just to close my talk, I want to tell you a little bit about how the end of my experience in the camp. I was in a camp called Wildorf Forest Camp. And we came back from work. And one night, and the camp commandant came and he tells us, tomorrow the trains will come. All the Jews will be taken out from this camp. Only the people in the hospital and the non-Jews will remain in camp. Now, question. Where do I have a better chance to survive? Remaining in camp or being taken with the rest of the Jews? So I'm a wise man, you know, even I was only 19 years old. I decided I'm better off to remain in camp. And when in camp, I can go to the hospital. I was lucky. My uncle, who was a physician, was in charge of the hospital. Hospital? It was a place we went to die. Yeah? Few people, the rest of them died in work. But anyway, that night I opened the door and crawled out of my hole, literally hole. We had dug a hole 6 feet under the ground. And this is what our home was. With an A-frame on top of it, with dirt and tree branches on top of it. And I crawled out and I avoided lights and I crawled to the hospital. I knocked at the door, lights turned off, opened up the door, and I climbed in. Next day the trains come, they take the Jews away. I don't have time to tell you all about it, but a day later, or 2 days later, it was May the 2nd. May the 2nd, 1945. I wake up inside the hospital to the sound of gunfire. There was single M1 rifle shots, you know. There were the rat-tat-tat staccato of the machine guns, occasionally a big boom of a cannon firing. The war has come to us. While I am contemplating that it's almost over, in comes a young SS lieutenant. And the trouble is that that young SS lieutenant is making a direct pass, a direct walk to me. And I said, my God, what the heck is this for me now? And he comes to me and he's dressed in an A1 uniform, boots clean, and his sidearm is strapped on the side, and he hands me a piece of paper and on it says, this is to testify that Lieutenant so-and-so was good to the Jews. And he hands it to me. He says, I understand you speak English. Well, I had 6 years of English in my high school. And I spoke English quite well. But what can I do right now? Not to, he says to me, translate and sign it. Well, I don't want to translate. I do not want to sign it. But he still has his gun. He can shoot me. How do I get out of this? So I tell him, Lieutenant, me, you know, speaking good English. I cannot, you know, this is too difficult for me to translate. He grabs the paper and he walks out, and I say, oh, phew. Well, about 15, 20 minutes later, suddenly the camp becomes quiet. So quiet that it's eerie. So we opened up the door. You see, the windows were all painted, all white, so you could not look out. And so we opened the door gingerly, because if the Germans are still there, they would shoot. I opened the door and we look around, and there are no Germans. All the people who were on top of the parapet surrounding the camp, holding machine guns, were all gone, nothing there. Open the door, we walk out. And we start milling about. And the question in everybody's mind is, what now? What am I going to do now? You see, for over a year, I did what I was told. I ate what was given. Somebody always directed, you know, what we should do. And now I am standing here and I don't know what to do. Nobody knows what to do. And while we are sort of in this middle of undecidedness and not knowing what to do, I hear the sound of a tank and a car. We run to the gate. It still had outright fry open on top of it. We open the gate and we go out to the street, and sure enough, there is a tank and a jeep, and we walk over to the jeep, and there is a lieutenant there, and he asks, does anybody speak English? And people point at me, he speaks English? I said, yes, I speak English, Lieutenant. Suddenly my English has improved decidedly. And the lieutenant says to me, I am Lieutenant Schwartz. Schwartz? My name is Schwartz. A lieutenant? An officer? Wonderful. What am I going to tell them? See, when I came to camp, they took away my humanity. They made me a number. A no name. 90,138, and I said, Jawohl. And now, standing before the lieutenant, I take back my identity. I tell the Lieutenant, my name is Eugen Schoenfeld. I have a name. It is a marvelous time. It's a fantastic occasion. How will I mark this time of being liberated? Dr. Livingston, I presume? You remember? I found the right words by which to mark this occasion. I turned to the lieutenant and I said, "Lieutenant, do you have a cigarette?" Ladies and gentlemen, of course, I cannot tell everything. As you know, it's a short time. But I wanted to share with you a couple of episodes of my life and how it affected my thinking. However, you know, no performance goes without advertising. I mean, that's an American rule. May I suggest to you 2 books that I have written. This is about my life. It's kind of a sociological autobiography called My Reconstructed Life, and you'll find more about me from this one. And this one is a book called Faith in Conflict. And this is about called the dialectic between Christianity and Judaism and its impact upon Jewish life and problems in Europe. If you want to read, this is more philosophical and theological, although easy to read. And this is, I am told by some people, that is far better than the book written by Elie Wiesel called Night. Elie Wiesel comes from about 60 miles away from my hometown. So this is my advertising for tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
That you have shared with us tonight. And I hope that this community, and I hope that the people that have been here tonight are as moved and as touched by your words as I am. And we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from all the citizens of Lanier County, from everyone here tonight. Thank you so graciously for giving of your time.